Well, welcome everyone to Adjuvant Protocols for Healing today, which is Thursday, July 21st, 2022. It's always great to have you on with me on this journey that we have been on for the last 7 years almost. And as you well know, these are recorded, and that's why we keep you all muted out throughout, so there's no interruptions. And they are on my YouTube channel, youtube.com, Joseph Antel. If you have any trouble getting on there, just contact me and I'll make sure that you get the link to there. If you, there's around 40 now. I don't know if we've put them all, the last couple on there, but there's almost 40 lectures related to different conditions, different topics that I've created for you over these years. Especially my recordings have been the last 2 years of the 7 years. And of course, as you all know, I teach the second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 8 a.m. Mountain Time on the Heart Sound Recorder. And those go to, we look at graphs, to discuss cases, other conversations. And I will go until you stop sending me graphs and this conversation ends. So today's conversation begins a new cycle in my teaching. And this came to me as I was thinking about what to teach. And as I said, I've been teaching different conditions related to my book, Adjuvant Protocols for Healing. By the way, if you want a signed copy of this book, if you don't have it and you want a signed copy, you can contact me and send me the check. And I have some books here that I will sign and send to you. And it's $150. And I will pay the shipping. So if you get it through Saline River Press, it's going to be a little bit more money. So, but if you want a signed copy, I have some here. And this is the link which you have in your notes on my YouTube channel, as you know. But I wanted to start a cycle with you related to actual cases and how I think about a case and what I do using my book with that particular case, as is today. And the reason I want to do this is I feel that this will take us even deeper into not just how I think, but how I was taught to think by Dr. Lee, John Courtney, Mark Anderson, and the original endocrinologists, which I go back to. I always refer back to them, what they were thinking about these cases. Of course, there's updated information, but the truth is the truth. And how, truth gets glossed over, it gets fogged over, and it gets covered up. So going back to the earlier days is always significant in thinking a case through, such as this one. So this is a client, I'm going to call this client 76. So only because he's 76 years old. So I don't mention his name. So, and he was diagnosed, and remember, it's okay. If they have a medical diagnosis, you should find that out. Anybody that calls me, I always say, what were you diagnosed with? I start there, because that's what the person has been told by medical science. Therefore, their belief, their response is, their head, you could say, is, surrounding that. Their head is filled with that, and so is their heart, by the way. whether it's actually what's happening or not. Then you can go deeper into what happened. So this client contacted me back in April, I believe it was, and he was diagnosed with angioedema, which is hives, skin rashes, and itching. So always look up what that medical or science is thinking about that. So here it is. Angioedema is a reaction. That's a key word. It's a reaction to a trigger that causes swelling in the tissue below the inner layer of your skin called the dermis, or the layer below a mucous membrane, sinuses, colon, all of the mucous membranes, lungs. So the mucous membranes cover a huge amount of territory of your inner body, very large amount. If the intestinal tract is 35 feet, if you open up the entire intestinal tract, it would be the size of a tennis court. That's how big of an area. So when you get problems in the mucous membranes, you know there's a lot going on. Chronic sinus infections, throat, lung. Angioedema often happens at the same time as hives, urticaria. So what is urticaria? If you look that up, urticaria is a rash triggered by foods, medications, and stress. So always, if you don't understand a word, now, a lot of you are brilliant in my in my book, so you know what these mean. But oftentimes, if you look it up, a word you may not know or quite understand, so you fully get what that meaning is, you'll pick up a little pearl related to these cases that nobody can do anything with. Oh, we don't know. Well, he has angioedema. We don't know. Let's give him steroids. That was the case with this client 76. Urticaria, stress. And for similar reasons. Both angioedema and hives happen when liquid from small blood vessels escape and fills up tissues. So now you're thinking, oh, capillary, yes, vitamin C, right there, right? Causing swelling. Usually angioedema comes on quickly and lasts about a day or two. Well, client 76 has had it for 3 years. It most often affects lips, eyes. However, angioedema can be serious, even fatal, when it affects the airways. So then you're getting into some kind of anaphylaxis, some kind of a severe allergic reaction. So anyway, I'm not going to read all of this, but I wanted to comment so you have a good feel. And there, of course, the complexity of medical science and these conditions, there's all different kinds: acute allergic, idiopathic, acquired C1 inhibitor, vibratory angioedema, hereditary. So there's all of that as well. And it could be a number of these. Now, my client 76, I would say we thought was acute allergic. But as it turns out, it wasn't. There's none of this in his family. So we'll see. We'll see as we go along here. Having just said that, the acute allergic was not, I should clarify what I just said, was not an allergy to, they have a new dog, they've had dogs, He and his wife. Foods, no. He had all the blood tests run. It was right here. You might be most familiar with this type of allergic drug reaction. Here it was with him. So this is the link to that, and you can look at it. But let's go to what the original teachers that use glandular extracts, Dr. Harrower and his associates from all over the world in the early 1900s. What did they say about this? It's very interesting, and it gives you real insight. So angio, the name is different. It's the same condition. Angioerotic edema. The family of transient neurocirculatory irritated swellings of the skin and mucous membranes, including angioneurotic or Quincke's edema, somebody's last name, atherma multiforme, in urticaria, which I just explained to you, rash, and a condition resembling purpura is now believed, here it is, to be caused by an allergic sympathetic reaction. Now, if you look through Harrower's book in the back, which I did, I looked for angioedema. They didn't have it, but they had this, and I found it. And you can have one sentence or one portion of a sentence that gives you real insight as a clinician of where we need to go from the holistic standpoint, from the natural standpoint. And here it is. Here is where is a sympathetic reaction. Okay. And you can go on and read about all the different symptomatology related to it. But so what does that tell us right there? Now, a lot of you are thinking this through with me now, because you've been on with me a long time. When you get a sympathetic reaction, you know that the endocrine system is involved. What regulates the sympathetic nervous system? Is, you could say, if you look it up, well, it's the brain. Well, what part of the brain? The pituitary. The pituitary is the regulator. And you could say, well, what about hypothalamus? Well, they work together. What about pineal? Yes. Those parts of the brain regulate how the body, how the brain is overriding the body's natural abilities to deal with different conditions, different things that arise. Here it is. Sympathetic reaction. So obviously, right away, when I first started working with client 76, I put him on an endocrine product that had pituitrophin in it, which was Simplex M, which you'll see. And it had thyroid, adrenal, because they were giving him steroids, and gonadal. So now I could have given him Paraplex, but when I gave him the Simplex M, which was my first choice with him because he doesn't have any blood sugar issues, he's athletic, and he's 76. So that's why I chose that. If you're wondering, why did you choose Simplex M over Paraplex, which is pituitary, thyroid, pancreas, and adrenal? Well, I did that because he has no issues with energy during the day. Good, even energy during the day. He has trouble sleeping, though. So there's your gonadal pituitary relationship. So just so you know what I'm thinking. So, and so let me go a little bit about his history from when I picked this up from 2020. I said 2019, I'm sorry. In 2019, so well, I'll go through these because this is interesting. In the last couple of years, he and his wife together have been doing the Noom diet, which is great. He lost 30 pounds, which he needed to. So that's a red flag right there. So just remember that. When you could say, well, Joe, why? What are you thinking about that? Why? Because when you lose that much weight, which is great, he didn't lose too much weight. His weight, when it came back to his balanced, almost high school weight, he stopped losing weight. He didn't continue. But he was flushing out a lot of stuff, a lot of katara, a lot of toxins from past meds. You go deep into detoxification when you lose that much weight. Your body really balances out. So that's a good thing in my book. But out of that came this other factor. Now, I don't know if it was the diet or it just was lingering underneath the surface, was this severe heartburn. And so when he took the heartburn medication, that's why I said an allergic reaction, here it is in the definition. He wasn't allergic to anything else, but he had a drug reaction. So let me just mute everybody out here. Thank you. So that's another very important piece. So, oops, sorry. And that's where all his problem, the swelling started, this angioedema. For a year after sometime in 2020, all the way through today, till I started working with him, April of 22, all this time, he would get hives. His lips would swell, and I believe he said a little bit in his throat, which is of concern. Remember, this so-called angioedema can be life-threatening. And the rash over the entire body, terrible. I mean, the poor guy was, going out of his mind, not literally, but figuratively, very uncomfortable. So, of course, their only answer is steroids. He'd take the steroids for 3 to 5 days, things would calm down, they'd be okay for a while, and then it would flare up again. So they contacted me in April of this year. So, and they ran, as I say, food allergies, animal allergies. So, and I put in here this slide right after here about steroids. Now, look, everyone, we have to work in cooperation with medical science. This guy, this wonderful person who I've gotten to know over many years, who reached out to me, he's a wonderful person, but he was beside himself. He needed the steroids. But oftentimes when a medical approach is used, they're like the heartburn med that kicked all of this off because it was really an endocrine issue. Really, it was his pituitary was not regulating his digestion. The pituitary is the regulator of digestive secretions throughout the body. So he was producing a lot of acid, or his food wasn't right coming out of this dietary change through the Noom diet. Whatever it was, it kicked this off. So if you go back and understand the lineage, which always goes back to the endocrine system, somewhere in the endocrine system, In his case, it was pituitary, which also ties in with healing as well. Any healing response in the body is going to originate in the pituitary. So that reaction. And then, of course, corticosteroids can cause gastrointestinal symptoms, cramping, acid reflux. So the very thing that started all this, they give him a medication and it increases it. So, and he didn't have, the ulcers or the pancreatic inflammation or even the colon infection, to my knowledge, none of that. But you're exacerbating the very thing that you're trying to get rid of when you add in other medications. This is the balance beam that we have to walk in guiding these people back to health. So now, just so you know, and you have in your records from these notes, which Lynn is put in the chat box and you can download. And on my YouTube channel website, you can download them as well as this recording. What my approach is to have them fill out a systems survey form, used to be called symptom survey form. Now, I didn't have him do this because I usually do, but I did not in his case. He had already had lots of blood work done, but these are the blood work panels I start with. Yes, there are other things. You can check them for vitamin D. You can check them for PSA, other things. But these are the core ones that I use. And then we did not run a heart sound recording on him because he lives in Arizona and a part of the time in Colorado. But these are the other sources of information. If you don't have a heart sound recorder, you always want to look at their heart. Now, this client 76 is on a month-long vacation with his wife in Europe. They're fighting that heat, bless their hearts. I hope they're having a good time. When he gets back, I will run a heart sound recording on him. And we did use the diagnostics, the lab work, just so you know. So when I first started working with him, I created a foundational protocol. Now, remember, there were a lot of things I could have put him on, but he didn't want to do a lot of products. He's like, I got to take these twice a day. Yes, 76, you do. So Simplex M, which I just reviewed, Cataplex C, because I was concerned that not only an infection, but Cataplex C being such a significant part of adrenal function, and him being on and off steroids, on, off, which affects the adrenal glands. It affects the stress factor. So that was my choice. And of course, lactic acid yeast to begin to balance out his gut. So that was the foundational. Then I added for the hives. So I really started working not only with the rash and the swelling, but the hives. And that swelling was my main concern. Spleen PMG. And I have all my definitions of these, which I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll mention factors with each one. Antronex, Thymex, and we're going to get to that in a second. And then Allergico, make a note to write in your notes when you copy them that this used to be called Albizia complex. So that's what I initially put him on. And then in 2 weeks after this program, the hives and the hives were no more. And the swelling in the mouth, the lips, and that throat, scratchy throat, which is a preamble to swelling, by the way. And the rash diminished, but the rash still continued. So with the rash, then I added in, which he allowed me 2 more products, which we'll get to in a second. I put him on calcium lactate. You know me and calcium lactate, and Cataplex F tablets with that, because you have to be able to drive or deliver the calcium from the blood into the tissue itself. This is my top, which you'll see, my rash, my skin rash protocol is calcium lactate, Cataplex F. My Hives protocol is this, which I'll go through with you. Then I put him on apple cider vinegar, because if he was having an allergic reaction, most, if not all, we never should say all, but most allergic reactions happen exclusively in an alkaline medium. So to acidify, and I'll show you more about apple cider vinegar. Then I had him taking Epsom salts bath. And dear Lynn Mayer, my associate, she's a mentor for Standard Process West out of Colorado Springs, has her own practice. She does a lot with helping me read blood work and read. I did a GI panel 2 with him. So I'm going to let Lynn come in and tell you what we found, because she is the best at explaining how to interpret these GI panels. And hopefully his name isn't on here, right? Okay.
Oh,
good.
76.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use the diagnostics. This is the GI panel number 2, which is expanded, looks at many things. And I think the cost on it is $325. And it is a test that you have to stay off your supplements for 4 to 5 days prior to doing the test. So you're getting a clearer picture about what's going on without the supplementation that you're taking. So these are 76's results. And so you'll see, I highlighted here that yeast showed up, many, and this was the microscopic exam. So they were also looking at ova and parasites. They didn't find any of that, but they did find a lot of microscopic evidence of yeast. When they cultured it, you'll see no yeast was isolated, and that often happens. Sometimes the yeast can die off in the transport to the company to be tested. It won't grow out, but they can see microscopically that there's evidence of much yeast. They also look at, what I like about the diagnostics, and you may have your own favorites, but I always pull out the diagnostics lab when I don't, it's something that they've been struggling with. They don't know. I want to look at everything. I don't want to just pick something. It could be this or it could be that. I want to see the whole dynamic of the gut health. So you'll see here that the bacterial, it was, fine. You're looking for expected findings or moderate to heavy growth of mixed gram positive or negative flora, and he had heavy growth of both. So that was fine. And if you move it down, Joseph, a little bit, so it also looks at these other parasites, C. difficile, all these other Cryptosporidium, etc. And it looks at what's the health of the intestinal lining. And so normal is 20 to 150 for that SIG-A reading, and his was a 4. So his intestinal lining was definitely compromised. And then if you go on down, I'll show you the other things that the test looks for, but nothing else came up positive. So those were the only 2 things that revealed themselves. It looks at, if you just want to slowly go down, Joseph, or minimize it so that they can see more. There's other, they look at, go back up a second. No, you're fine. Go down to that last page. They also look at some of the foods that could possibly be at issue too. So they look at dairy, soy, egg, and gluten. And it's something, when you're doing the tests, this particular test, you want to be sure and have the person challenge their body with those foods prior to taking the test so that you can get a clearer picture. So sometimes like his SIG-A was low. So this, when we retest it, we're going to retest for these foods, because when the SIG-A is low, his was quite low. These can be false negatives. It's the body is so compromised, the intestinal lining, that it can't tell you the truth about the foods. So that's why you always want to, when you retest, get the SIG-A up and retest these foods, because now it can tell you more about the truth of if there's a complication with that. When I very first started out with this test, I'd get people who had brought their test into me and they were busy eating gluten because their test said negative, but their SIG-A was very low. So I'd say, I still want you to stay off that, because your body's not, we don't know that your body's telling us the truth about that. So just a heads up on that. If their SIG-A is really low, you want to keep them off the offending foods, potentially, especially gluten. So I think that's all I have to share. It was kind of an interesting test. And I've had people where nothing reveals itself. So, you know, I'm just like, well, then we need to find another road. But his was very outstanding with the yeast, underlying yeast, and the compromised intestinal lining.
Great. Thanks so much, Lynn. By the way, that yellow, you can't hardly see the writing. At least,
yeah, I see that.
So
yeah,
we'll have to redo the slides and just put an asterisk or something.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So very good. Yeah, and that's why I have Lynn in many cases help me look at these, because her insight. So you could say, well, 76, client 76, he's okay. No, he's loaded with yeast. Was it showing? Well, you know, women, if they're high in yeast, that's why we do these panels, because it will pick something up if it's severe enough. And as Lynn said, sometimes you say, geez, nothing is showing. But you always can initiate a program and awaken the body, like I did, foundational things, like I did the simplex M, the C, the lactic acid yeast, all of that, then test them again, because something is there. You can't, especially related to skin. Remember, everyone, if it's coming out through the skin, there is something in the blood that the body, through its normal channels of detoxification and elimination, either can't get rid of it or can't deal with it. So remember, when something that doesn't serve the body is in the blood, the body will send it to the lymph system, and either the lymph system will deal with it, or it will send it back through the lymph vessels. Remember, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. You have twice as many lymph vessels as blood vessels. For that reason, to keep the blood sacred, to keep it whole, to keep it holy, to keep it unadulterated, unimposed upon. But if the body, through all those means, can't do it, it will use the largest organ of elimination, the largest organ in the body, which is the human skin. And that's what was happening with client 76. It was coming out through his skin. That's why I was having him do the baths. So now he was on this Noom diet and had great success with it. But he still, we could not, not me, but what we were doing, even though it was just a few short weeks from, you know, May to April, late April to beginning of June, still couldn't get rid of these rashes. Things were clearing fine. So I go to, now you could say, well, why didn't you do the paleo? That could have been okay. But highly sensitive people that have a lot going on, you have to go to this diet, which is called the FODMAP diet. Now, you can read about this. I've put enough 2 different websites on it as far as some of the symptomatology. Usually this is used for irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's, but you can, or SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, sure. And that may be a factor with client 76 down the road. We'll deal with that, and I'll show you at the end here. But remember that I had to put him on an elimination diet to keep going in my search for the right. And so when I did this, it took the rash. Everything else is pretty good now. The rash down a notch, a little bit better. And these are the foods you eliminate. No fruit, no honey, no corn syrup, agave, no dairy, not even raw dairy. Now, you know how much I love raw dairy and recommend it. None. Wheat, onions, garlic. There's certain, so you can go into this diet. It'll give you the whole list of do's and don'ts. So, and alcohols and fruits. Client 76 said to me, I can do all of this except for the alcohol. He's retired. He's enjoying life, likes a glass of wine. So here is the protocol for the hives that I did, I used, and it worked. And I have to say, with hives, this is almost 100%. I have never had hives using spleen PMG. Remember, ES in my book, which explains in the front of my book, it explains all these labelings. Spleen PMG has never failed me with hives. So 100% in my experience. So because spleen is such a key, remember, it is the protomorphogen. It's known as the universal protomorphogen. You can use it for anything. And many other, but especially with skin and lymph node protection and regeneration. So, and of course, Antranex, our famous antihistamine, but also if you read through these notes, which again, I have so much to tell you and so little time, you can read through these articles that they were using this back in the early 1930s, 1939. It was in the yearbook of general medicine. It was known as Yakuton. So here it is. I'm not going to read through this, but what they found that it also act as it dilated the portal vein. It opened up more liver flow. When you open up the flow to the liver, most of the toxic things will begin to move out. That the body, the liver tends to constrict that because it doesn't want large amounts of that, but then it overdoes it. And so here it is. And then, of course, the famous thymus extract called Thymex. Now, this is the cytosol extract. There's thymus PMG, which I could have used, but I wanted to use Thymex specifically because I wanted to encourage lymphatic drainage, make sure that there was no infection going on, and awaken the pillar of the immune system, the T cells, and hyperglandular activity. He's on steroids. Hypo. That's what you get with steroidal and thyroid. So Thymex The thymus has a lot to do with any type of allergic reaction, which he had, client 76, to this medication that triggered this whole thing. Now we know, and I'll get to the part about the yeast that we just reviewed, but I want to take a segue for 10 minutes here. My brother-in-law sent me this wonderful podcast on the thymus. Remember, we have discussed it. I did a whole hour and a half on the thymus, which is in my YouTube channel. Remember, the thymus is the key to immune function and lymphatic drainage. Most people, through most of the year, especially after 60 years old, and in the first 10 years of life, need, it doesn't take away from the other years of life, need to have thymus extract daily or bi-weekly in their system. You're gonna know why after you hear this lecture for 10 minutes. So Lynn, you can shut that off? What she continued, oops, sorry. So isn't that amazing, everyone? I hope you like that. And you're gonna have to listen to it. This is the 6th time I've listened to it. So good, we're recording, Lynn, right? Okay.
Yes.
And truly, what we've been told all these years, that the thymus atrophies, it doesn't play a significant part. That information is not only wrong, it always was wrong, that it's now inaccurate. They know so much about this now. So in the case, to bring this back, I wanted to say one more thing. What they go on, what they found, and what they're doing now is when they do a heart transplant, the body's reaction is to reject that organ because of these cells that can identify the thymus cells in that person. Says, this isn't me. It isn't me. So what they're doing now is they're taking the thymus, part of the thymus tissue from that person's heart that's going to be transplanted into another person, and they don't put it where the thymus is, they just put it in the muscle of the leg. Now I know that sounds crazy. And the person's body is no longer rejecting that heart transplant. So of course they'll relate this to other organ transplants. Not that I'm in favor of that. I'm just telling you that it is interesting how smart, how intelligent the body is. And so this is why I, as a prelude to this, all of you hearing this, I said that we have to support ourselves throughout life with thymus extract, and especially the Thymex, as I said, because that's the cytosol extract. That is the one that helps with function. It assists, not with a lymphatic drainage, but it helps stimulate function of that organ. Young children, that's why it's in children's chewable contraplex. So, and on and on. This is a huge part. So in the case of client 76, I gave him, 6 a day. I wanted to give him 9 a day of Thymex because I needed to awaken his body to know what is him and what is not him, so that his immune system would take care of this without overreacting. And so that is the significance of of the thymus gland and these thymus extracts. And again, this has been known and then buried. So the other product that, so remember I used the spleen, the Antranex for the liver allergic reaction, or just opening up to empower the liver with the Antranex, dilating that portal vein, the Thymex, to awaken that clarification. What is client 76 and what is not him? The body needs to know that, then the body can take care of it. The other thing that was so effective is Allergico. Now, recently, they've changed this from Albizia complex to Allergico. So the Albizia is the main part of this herbal formulation, and Chinese skullcap. So why would they put Chinese skullcap in there? Because the skullcap is an herb specifically that does many things, but I'll tell you what I like to think about this herb. It's for the person that is angry. It's for the tissue that is angry. Now that's more esoteric. You can look up what else skullcap does. But remember that if you have an angry person, like it's in Nevaton, or you can use skullcap alone as a sedative. And it's an amazing herb, but it's more for the person or the body that is angry. Client 76, his body is angry. The rash was driving him crazy. Now, they switched out from using feverfew, which was for migraine headaches and for inflammatory processes, to the black cumin seed. Now, why did they do that? Well, recent information about cumin seed relates to inflammation. So remember, whenever there is any type of reaction in the body, which is signified, it's some kind of condition or disease process, that. But the sign that it's there, other than the disease of that organ, gland, or tissue, is inflammation. When anything like that is going on, especially in the mucous membranes. Now, here he had all this yeast in his bowel, in his intestinal tract, both small and large. That created an inflammation of the mast cells. The mast cells primarily lie in the mucous membranes of the body. So this formula, with the added black cumin now, but especially Albizia, tells those mast cells create histamine. That's what a histamine reaction is those mast cells now are going to attack something in that environment, wherever they are. But they overattack. And so what Albizia does, that herb, the components of that, the characteristic is to chill them out, calm down, skullcap, calm the whole system down, overreacting. And then the black cumin seed, which it targets inflammation and tamps it down. So you could see when Kerry Bone switched this out, and it says here, more than 9 to 10 people said after with hay fever, rhinitis, allergic reactions, their sneezing, itching eyes, running nose, and other symptoms got better or went away completely. So, and you can read, there's 2 articles on this. And again, it's this that's the black cumin seed oil. And then again, what I said about the albizia. It has traditionally been used to help provide relief for allergic conditions such as hay fever, eczema, skin, right? That's why I applied this to client 76, skin and itchy skin rashes. So, but I was still missing a piece. So here's one other article on, and so I tried to get him to get on to the, I wanted to use Cal-Ammo, but it just was too many supplements, and he really needed to take those the many that I had put him on. So what I did was, with many clients I do is, I said, are you willing to take a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in the morning in a little hot beverage? I couldn't add the honey because he was on the FODMAP. He can't have that. So he had to just take it like a man, and so to speak, and drink it down, which is not a big deal. He couldn't mix it with any sugar. And in the evening, of course, he could have it with a salad. And I even said you could have a salad with your breakfast in the morning and put the apple cider. You just have to get it into you to acidify, because these reactions that he was having was a piece of that is because he was too alkaline. So here is a great article I found for you related to apple cider vinegar. So I wanted to read this one piece. If you think about it, you have pickles and other fermented vegetables that are acidic. The acid, which is acetic acid, which is one molecule off from hydrochloric acid, by the way, they are kept in preserves of food, prevents bacterial growth. Well, if it does it with food, would it do it inside client 76? Yes. When you consume apple cider vinegar, it helps prevent the overgrowth of microbes, especially if you have a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So they kind of repeat themselves there. SIBO, or small intestine bacterial overgrowth, this is the condition when the bacteria are growing in the wrong place. So you can read through what apple cider vinegar does. And it does much more. I loved reading this because it does decrease acid reflux. It decreases gas and bloating, and it helps release bile, which I never knew that. I knew about these other things. I didn't know it helps you absorb minerals. Of course, we know that hydrochloric acid helps you absorb calcium and iron. So there you have it. And here it is, calcium and iron. But acetic acid does the same thing. And of course, as I said, I wanted to put him on Cal-Ammo, and you can read this through. I didn't use this because he just couldn't keep taking more products. And then, as I said, when I got things pretty much under control, yet the skin rash was still there, I mainly used these two products, calcium and F. And you can see some of the other things that I used with him, Thymax, or also consider spleen with the skin disorders. But this really took it down a notch, the itching. And how I knew that it was doing that is that he couldn't sleep. Even with an Epsom salt bath, he was really struggling with sleep, which you don't heal if you don't sleep. And so that really took it down. So at least he was sleeping better. And here is, of course, I'm giving you all these in your notes, not to go through them all, but to help you with, I guess you could say, gospel according to Joseph, my definitions. How, if you said to me, explain calcium lactate to me, give me 4 things. What does it do? because in the catalogs, and maybe the clinical reference guide explains it a little bit more, but I think I go a little bit deeper with here with these. So you can read about these and the other products related to skin. For instance, Cataplex G, I was not able to get him on that, but that really helps with irritation and skin issues, eye issues, any itching in the body. It's great for that. Zinc, which is crucial for wound healing, immune function, so many. This is a great article you can read through on zinc. I already had him on Cataplex C. And why? People with immune challenges, collagen repair, scratching himself, right? And adrenal support. So, and of course, in the future, I will definitely get him on dermatrophin to get this skin healed up and go to cola. So you can look through all of that. So I had reached this point, things were getting under control, but it wasn't quite doing it. Then we got the results back, and Lynn and I got on the phone with this client 76 and his wife. And then we knew that he had gut dysbiosis. We had to do the weed and feed. This took it to almost clearing. So before he left on his trip, he said, all of this was almost gone. Now, he did the weed and feed program I have them do it for 6 weekends. So he called me, I said, check in halfway through. So about the 4th weekend, just before the 4th weekend, he called me, he said, it's still there, Joe. I mean, it's, the hives and the rash is better, but it's still there. And I said, give it 6 weekends. And sure enough, call me after the 4th weekend. Sure enough, after the 4th weekend on this weed and feed program, he said, it's really under control. Little flare-ups here and there. Because why? Why is he still flaring up? Well, they said it well in that thymus issue. When you remove a bacteria, I believe they said that in that they were talking about if you remove the bacteria from the body, then and separate it out, it just dies, right? That's why you have to flush out the bacteria. What feeds that yeast is sugar, glucose. If he was able to completely go cold turkey, which he didn't, he was very disciplined. I was proud of him. And his wife did this 6 weekends with him because of any intimacy, even kissing each other, you can spread that back and forth. You can give that yeast back and forth through saliva, through any type of body fluids. So, or intimacy. There it is. And so they both did it. And after the 4th weekend, he was pretty much, before he left, I hope it doesn't fall apart while he's on this trip, though he did bring steroids with him and all his supplements. And I kept him on, we didn't have the gut flora, but I'll explain that. So this is the weed and feed program, but he did bring this. And I told him that he needed to take this daily while he was on the trip every day, because I knew, they would be eating foods that especially him, that he shouldn't be eating. So this is, and all I did with him was I did the gut flora, not the gut flora, but the replacement for that, which I'll go through in a second, and the Zymex. I didn't do these two. And then during the week, he was already on lactic acid yeast. And I don't think I even did. Oh, I did ochrapepsin with him. Yeah. And I'll get to the Enzacor, I'll get to the lactans later on with him. So the gut flora complex, as many of you know, is on back order. So it was Lynn that found this product, and several of us are using this now, have used it, and it's great. Undecilic acid. I think I said it right. Undecilenic acid, or something like that. And it's a yeast killer. Now we're used to we used over the years by other companies. Standard doesn't carry this, is caprylic acid, and so but this product, a few people that have tried it since my lectures have done really well with it. And so I have to laugh though, reading this through before I lectured. You know, my mother was a big user of castor oil, and we hated it. But the main ingredient in this acid is derived from castor oil. So the old time remedies that everyone hated when they were children and we suffered through it were actually good for us. At least parts of it were. So, and so 76 took this with him and was going to take it, I think, either every day or 3 days a week. And that the 5 gels twice a day, I think I had him do while he was gone, and his wife as well. And he took the lactic acid. He didn't do the Zymex, but these are the other products in that weed and feed program. One of the other great products that I will eventually put him on is I will eventually put him on is this Spanish black radish. So this is a product that they make at Standard Process, and it's been used in folk medicine, and it's a great detoxification agent, heavy metal. So I don't know what part of that medication for his 76's, that heartburn, I don't know. But all I know is that really triggered and set his system off to where his life was almost unbearable. So I want to make sure that that gets cleaned out. So these other products you can go through. I put all these definitions contained in. Now, where am I going to go with him when he gets back? Well, when he and his wife get back, I will make sure that they do 6 weekends once or twice a year on the gut dysbiosis protocol, on this protocol, on this one. And they bought my book, so they have it. And even if they do just the primary for 6 weekends, once or twice a year. So you do it every January after the holidays, and you do it in June. It's very simple. 6 weekends. It's not a big deal at all. But they are the type of couple that they have to do this for the rest of their lives, because they have a propensity to get this high yeast overgrowth. And thank God that, you know, that we got the reading and we figured out what it was, because you always have to, in the end, you have to figure out what is causing this. And you may have to go through different testing. Sometimes, as Lynn said earlier, it doesn't always reveal itself, but eventually it does reveal itself. Keep testing. So where will I go with them? Well, I will eventually keep some kind of a foundational protocol, definitely Simplex, I think I put this at the end. What I would definitely the Simplex M to keep the endocrine balance there and keep the immune alliance strong. And then probably, oh yes, and then I will give him Immuplex, because I'm going to narrow down the things that I want him to stay on for the rest of his life, which is thymus and spleen. And liver and bone marrow or bone is good as well. Plus, there's a lot of other vitamins and minerals. This is a multivitamin that targets the immune alliance and support. So that product with the Simplex M, he'll be on the rest of his life, as long as he'll continue to work with me. So now, the other things that I probably will do is I will probably look at this SIBO pattern, because I know that that the small intestinal bacteria overgrowth has done some damage in that colon, in that part of his small intestine. So you have about 5 meters of intestinal tract. So 1 meter is 3 feet. So you got about 15 feet of small intestine. It's a big area. And so a lot of that is irritated. You can get other infections. So I will eventually use the ochrapepsin, the Cyruta Plus, to repair. And then, of course, either use the gut flora or that other product, 722, and then maybe even some clay to draw out any other toxins that might be there. So I'm not going to go into this because I'm really good with my time, and I want to be able to finish up here. But understanding this situation with his gut, you have to go, or with anyone's intestinal tract with these skin issues. How many clients do you have with eczema, psoriasis? So what do? They put them on immune suppressing drugs, Humira. That's what they put them on, and other drugs like Humira. Well, that doesn't fix anything. So understanding as healthcare providers, as holistic healthcare providers, understanding what that intestinal tract really means and what we can do for it is the key to helping these people not out of their acute phase, but like 76 for the rest of his life. Now, the choice is his as far as what he puts into his mouth, and he can live discomfort free or struggle with that based on his decisions. So you can go through my definitions of these products in your own time as you understand these different protocols. So and the other one that I will eventually, like, I will do that SIBO protocol probably for 3 to 6 months. And then the rest of the year, I will either use this again, Immuplex, Simplex M, but then again, I'll go deeper into the healing of that gut lining, either through the leaky gut protocol, as they say, or actually more accurately, it's increased intestinal permeability, repair that gut. Or I will use the protocol, which are synonymous almost, is this protocol for healing. Now, remember, I'll already have him on some pituitrophin, but maybe I'll go even deeper into this and the products that are related. So The last thing that I want to leave with you is Monica Corrado's book. Now, I know I have him on a FODMAP diet, and he's got the Noom diet, but who knows what foods, if they're buying the foods from Noom, I'm sure they're a good quality. I hope they are, but we still need to get him into thinking. They're retired and they love to cook and eat. To get them into, as a couple, the rest of their lives, fermenting food, using meat stock, using bone broth, eating bone marrow, to really increase and keep the balance of that intestinal lining. It just can't be lactic acid yeast, even though he'll have to be on that for the rest of his life. It can't be, always cleaning him out. To get them into eating foods that, and his wife, that make it a part of their life. 100% of the time? Maybe, probably not. I'll take 70% of the time. And here is the book that teaches individuals how to eat, what to eat, and how to make these foods. So if you don't have this, it's great. You should be selling this book in your office, because this can change people's lives. It gives them an entirely different direction. And so I trust you have enjoyed this. I certainly always value your time, and I love sharing these cases with you. And I will be doing another one next month. I haven't chosen which one. I think I have a couple in mind. And we will continue our understanding and our work together in allowing people to find their way physically, mentally, emotionally, in the way of being healed in this lifetime. So blessings to you all. And I will be with you next Tuesday on my heart sound recording webinar at 8 a.m. Mountain Time.
Joseph, pause
Yes.
your recording, but I just now put up the yeast correction